Hello, my name is Wendy Myers. Welcome to the podcast. You can learn more about me at myersdetox.com, where I try to teach you everything about heavy metal detoxification, detox protocols. We have hundreds of articles, hundreds of podcasts on the website so that you can learn about how to detox your body and how toxic metals and heavy metals are contributing to your health issues. It might be the missing link, that missing piece of the puzzle that you've been searching for in your health issues. Today we have my friend Diane Kazer on the show today, and she's going to speak to us today about how emotions and unresolved trauma play such a huge role in women's health conditions and the path that they can follow to set themselves free from their emotional and physical health issues. This is something I've been talking a lot about on the podcast because I find that many women have health issues that they're looking for this physical cause, this physical resolution, and taking supplements or medications or what have you, when many times there's an emotional trauma component to it, that they have unresolved emotions or anger or trauma that are actually contributing to their physical health issue, and that root cause has to be addressed. Our top 3 takeaways on the show are the number 1 problem women face today with their health, the top 5 myths that prevent women from healing, and how emotions and unresolved trauma play a role in women's health conditions. Diane, she's really interesting. She's a former soccer player, a pro soccer player turned functional and diagnostic nutritional practitioner and hormone warrior. She's a visionary and game changer in the world of women's hormones and detox, empowerment, and entrepreneurship. Clients come to her from all around the world to ditch their health roadblocks and discover their soul goal. She is the creator of the Chi Hormone Warrior Transformation Tribe, which offers the perfect trilogy for all women's transformation. Cleanse your body, heal your hormones, ignite your life. Her mission is to help women get the body they want, the energy they crave, and the life they deserve in a matter of weeks, even if they've been struggling with their health for decades. You can learn more about her at dianekazer.com and learn more about her programs at dianekazer.com/MyersDetox. So many of you guys are listening up to the podcast are searching for clues, are searching for answers as to why you're not feeling well, why you have fatigue, why you have brain fog, why you have autoimmune conditions, why you have food sensitivities and what have you. And many of you are doing everything right. You're eating a healthy diet, you're exercising, you're taking great supplements, and can't figure out what exactly is going on. And you don't want to take medications. You don't want to, do the mainstream medical path. And that's why you're listening to this show. And for many of you listening, you also know that I talk so much about heavy metal toxicity and how this is an underlying root cause of many people's health issues. I created a very, very simple quiz. It'll take you 5 minutes to do at metalsquiz.com. And I wanted to create this quiz to give you some awareness about your potential level for heavy metal toxicity in your body, and if these metals are contributing to your fatigue, to your brain fog, to other health issues. So take a couple seconds, go to metalsquiz.com, take the quiz, and find out what your body burden of metals is. Diane, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Wendy, thanks for having me again.
Yes. So Diane, she's my very good friend, and I wanted to have her to come on the show to talk about so many different things that women deal with, which is emotional trauma and different types of toxins that we don't normally talk about on the podcast. So tell us, Diane, what's the number one problem that women face today when they're trying to deal with their health issues? It's not really what we think. So tell us what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, exactly. So many women today, we're taught go to your doctor, right? And I know you talk so much about that on the show, and we get stuck in this treadmill of searching to be put into a box, a diagnosis, and then, thank God I got a diagnosis, and now I finally know what's wrong with me. And then we run around with this label and live as though that's the problem when it's really not. So the real problem, and you've wrote about this too in your book, is that of course we're burned out. Maybe not me and you, because we work harder on our body, and that's why we have our shows. But they want to feel better, but they're too tired and too overwhelmed and too lost and not confident in themselves to try to figure out why. So it's it's this paralyzing paradox where they want to feel better, but they don't feel well enough to do their own research. So there's a lot of data out there. It's funny because when I started diving into the research, which I love research, just like you, we'll have, wars, me and you, competitions. Who's up later at night than the other person? 2:00 and 4:00 in the morning going, wow, this is so fascinating. And really feeling responsibility to help people with the new research. And what I found in doing this research, when I started pulling together a program that we developed this year, a holistic approach where we look at all of the pillars, is that there's all these different conditions that had a word and then fatigue at the end. It was like, oh, have you heard of the term decision fatigue or compassion fatigue? Or we've heard of adrenal fatigue and thyroid fatigue and digestion fatigue, but there's also empathy fatigue. Have you heard of these before?
No, I haven't.
It's when I started doing the research, I went, wow, there's like fatigue attached to everything. So there are many different reasons today why we're so tired. And you and I talk a lot about toxicity, and I have over the last 8 years or so. But when I really started looking into the trauma, because a couple of years ago, I was on the verge of, considering how would I just let myself go? Is this life even worth continuing on with? I was at this point where I didn't know if there was more reason to live. So I was lacking a purpose, lacking a passion. And that was scary. That was really scary. And at that point, there was something that turned me around, and that was feeling support from, my peers, my friends, and professionals. And what saved me from that is that there's another statistic, and I'll go back to the fatigue part, is that they looked at the data of how many people really consider, this was about 20 years ago, how many people did they consider as close friends in their life that they could depend on if they needed something, if they needed help. And the average is about 5. And now the average is 0 to 0.5. And there was a big study that was done on this. So that's not how I was feeling. I felt like I had a really good foundation in my life. So I reached out. But so many people, so many women specifically, or I should say the feminine aspect of whoever the person is, right? We feel this need to fix everyone, to help everyone. And it's been a drive that was created at childhood. And it typically is, we see our parents struggling and we carry this responsibility that I got to save my parents and then we got to save the world. But when do we ever get to save ourselves? So decision fatigue is something that was brought up by Jim Quick, and he's all about the brain and how to not have brain fog and how to optimize the brain performance. So I heard decision fatigue from him. So it's, if we have so many decisions to make in a day, no wonder why we're tired by like 2:00. Never mind just what we're eating for lunch, but all the thoughts that we think and all the decisions that we have to make, we peter out real soon. That's why we should start our morning with our us time. And then empathy fatigue and compassion fatigue, I hadn't even heard of those ones until I started digging into the research earlier this year. When we see people struggling, especially the feminine, we'll feel compelled to support them and to help them heal, when all the while we're starting to ignore ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so how do women get into this prison? Like, the medical industry starts with labs first. And so why do you recommend a different starting point for women when you're working with them, doing one-on-one coaching or with your programs?
Yeah. So I want to speak to this in a visual, and to me, it was a very powerful visual. I don't know if you've seen these before, Wendy, but being like looking into the psychological aspects of healing. And I'm an FDN like you, FDN practitioner, and looking at nutrition and looking at toxicity. And we always say, like, let's look at stress. Let's look at what causes stress or how to manage stress or reduce stress. But people go, well, I can't reduce stress. I have many responsibilities. What we do is this visual. If you can imagine that you're in a room and this room has bars all around you, and these bars are your prison. So we put ourselves in our own prison. And what I mean by that is, and many people's egos are going to be like, I'm not in a prison. I didn't put myself here. They did. And that person did. And my mom did. And my brother did. And my boss did. And my significant other does. And my kids do. They put me in prison. There's nothing I can do. Right. And that's very much a disempowering victim mindset that says, I don't want to own responsibility for my life. And I can be empathetic to that because I was there at one point too, but there comes a time where we have to take our power back. And the visual of these bars all around us is the prison that we're in, but we are the ones that hold the key in our hand to unlock that prison door and fly, or maybe flop until we can fly again. And that's what we work with women on, is the confidence to soar again. And I say fly is first love yourself. But so many of us have been programmed that you're last. What do you mean love yourself first? That's selfish. You have kids to raise. Look at these women. The guilt that we receive as moms, and you're a mom, Wendy, the guilt that we get. Oh, how dare you take a trip? You have kids to raise. How dare you put your needs first, whatever that means. Look at your kids over there. And of course, there's selfishness and then there's selflessness. So these bars are, over the years, we have seen other people act, and we have learned and we've been conditioned to respond in certain ways by society, whether it's magazines or TV, or, you struggled with bulimia. I know you've talked about it on your shows. This like constant pressure to look a certain way and to be perfect. And that's, as a pro soccer player, that's another one of my jams too, is you can't miss a ball on the field. You got to be perfect or else. So every one of these bars represents some identity of some kind of an event or with a person suffering in our life where we went, I am never going to look stupid again. And so as a result, I'm going to appear perfect. And with every one of these bars, this is this person's expectations. I'll own that as a bar. My parents' expectations to go to school and become a doctor, that's another bar. And so we build these bars and we create our own prison walls, and we can get out of them, but we have gotten our needs met and our attention and what we perceive as love and approval. We're so approval seeking. We need to belong to something, that these bars mean something to us. We hold them tight. And if we're not getting approval from the outside world, we live in a constant a degree of shame. And in our life, we start shoulding all over ourselves. I should do that. I should do that because I have to fulfill all the people and all these expectations of all the bars around me. And we wear many masks, and then we lose ourselves. So who are we? We're other people pleasing. We are trying to, we have a relationship with money that's poor. We have to maintain a certain status. We have fear of missing out. But we're giving our power away because now we've lost trust in ourselves. And if we don't have trust in ourselves, then how can we have trust in anything outside of ourselves? So we've lost that gut feeling because of all of the people pleasing. And that prison is a very palatable place that when I see the women coming to us, they've run a ton of labs, a ton. And it's like, well, what kind of labs have you done looking into your soul?
Yeah. And that's something I've been talking about more and more with the clients that I'm working with and on the podcast, because people have the anger and they have guilt and they have shame, they have trauma that they internalize that then causes physical health issues. And you're not going to find that on a lab. And so let's talk about that. What I had asked before, the medical industry starts with labs first. So why do you recommend this different starting point for women to start thinking about how their emotions and trauma might be contributing to their health issues?
Yeah. Because labs are just clues, right? Labs are good clues for us. But the results of the labs are typically as a result of the thoughts that we think that create the way our metabolism works, that creates our immune system. So we know that the more in our head we are, like that zombie song, in your head, the more in our head we are about past or pressure about future, the more cortisol that we're releasing. And yeah, we're going to see that in a lab test. And someone may recommend certain things where your body can produce more cortisol, or here, so take some licorice root, or prescriptions worse off if you diagnosed with an adrenal issue from a doctor. And there's nothing you can do but take a pill. But the root of all of this is in our head. And so it's interesting when we hear doctors say, oh, it's all in your head. It's like, well, what does that even mean? I mean, it kind of is, because if we look at some of the research, which we can't look at on labs, is that like 80% of chronic pain now can be attributed to chronic emotional thoughts. So if women go in and start with a lab, instead of looking at them in the mirror at themselves and what kind of control they have in their own life, then they're just adding another bar of expectations from a doctor to take this drug. I just talked to a client before we got on the call today, and her doctor was furious that she wanted to take her IUD out. And, I told her, I said, you're going to go in there and I want you to ask her to run some of these markers. And it's probably not going to be a very comfortable conversation because they don't know these sorts of things. They don't know the root cause of hormonal chaos and why they recommend an IUD just to stabilize your hormones. But it doesn't empower you on why your hormones were out of whack to begin with.
Yeah.
And so it was a hard conversation. It was, the doctor was very angry and she felt very bullied. But she was also a victim of everything in her life. And I became the next person that didn't fix her. So we had to have a very real conversation with her that these labs are clues. But if we keep leaning into the labs and wait until the labs come back with the results, then you have no power, and at least you don't believe that you have power to start doing things in the meantime, because we are the reason why we got to where we were to begin with. Most of the time, right? Like some kids today, we know they're born with tons of toxic chemicals, and that's a totally different story. And sometimes C-sections and things will warrant that we don't have a really solid immune system. But starting with why and starting with I is what will help them to break through, because now they can begin to form a relationship with themselves and really truly love themselves and collect data instead of form another identity about themselves and be fearful about what comes back.
Yeah, their identity becoming their diagnosis, their diagnosis becoming their identity. And so we know that we've encountered many people in our lives as clinicians and personally, and people listening can relate to this, but there's some people that they are very ill and they just don't get well, and they go to doctor to practitioner, and there's just something preventing them from healing. So what are your top 5 myths that you're constantly debunking with women that are preventing them from healing?
Yeah. And this is something that I'll elaborate on in the end, because I want to allow women to see the depths of this, because it's pretty real. And that is that when we just talked about it, is when we accept our doctor's word as our destiny, then we have completely lost our power. And we've been brainwashed this whole time that our doctor knows the answer. Your doctor knows best, your ex knows best, or whoever knows best, which means I don't know anything. Who am I to know anything? So the first one is to not accept your doctor's word as your destiny or your identity, because when we look at, as you know, the model of care today, our hospitals are really good at acute care, but there is just no place for healing root cause chronic care issues that are recurring over and over. And as you even talked about, I think I looked at your newsletter, I think it was yesterday, about how you struggled with a lot of back issues, right? And then did NAS and worked on healing your back pain. And there's so much of our emotional trauma that is stored in various parts of our body, depending on whenever it was that we felt them. So what if there really just is no pain? There just is an association with a past trauma that lives in that specific area. So if we can free that pain, then we won't need the medications. We won't need to be in and out with prednisone or steroid injections. So they're not getting to the root. So don't accept your doctor's word as your destiny, and don't give them as much power as you've given to them, because at that point you're losing every single time. And then the definition of insanity, going back in and out of the hospital, looking for a different answer, or it's like trying to wash the same place on your counter over and over, and it's super clean, and you just can't figure out, if it's ever going to get polished.
Yeah, because there's so many doctors, and if someone's practicing mainstream medical, mainstream medical care, they're going, typically going to say, if you have a thyroid issue, you go in, they say you need thyroid medicine for life. The next doctor, thyroid medicine for life. Next doctor, same thing. You're not going to get a different answer, especially for things like autoimmune or or other chronic conditions for which there is no cure, so to speak, you're going to get the same answer from that community. So you have to take your power into your own hands, your health into your own hands, because no one is going to care as much about your health as you do. So I love what you're talking about. You have to empower yourself because no one's going to do that for you. Or just not. No one has the time or the the interest as much as you do about your own health.
Unfortunately, yeah, that's the truth. Is we tend to hope that, even me or you, Wendy, I mean, we care. We're practitioners that care, but we're not running around with them 24/7. We're not sleeping right next to them and see if they snore or kick or wake up and pee in the middle of the night. There's just so many variables, which is why, even working with just a natural doctor and seeing them, just one appointment at a time without addressing the entire lifestyle and just sitting down and having a conversation of what's this all for? Which is, to digress for a moment, that's what's it for? If you become your optimal self, if you have 3 times more energy, if you're sleeping better, if you're sexing better, if you get all these things that you think that you want because you've been taught that that's what you should want, then what? Like, what are you going to do with your life at that point? And it's interesting, Wendy, because I'm taking 10 women on a retreat tomorrow to Costa Rica, and I'm really, really excited about this. It's been a lot of planning. It's my first one, but it's going to be fun. Now I'm in the fun stages of it,
Yeah, I wish I could join you on that. I have a little bit too much going on this month, but I would love to go down to Costa Rica with you and hang out for a week and just learn everything that you teach.
Yeah, it's a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of and getting back into our, this is so next time, Wendy, getting into this little girl here, getting our inner child involved, and what does she want? Because she is the one who's in prison now. So working with our inner child and raising our inner child is another relationship that so many of us miss out on. We raise our biological child, but we miss out on our inner child, and that's who can save us. So the dynamic of where we start with our women is we have this trio where we've got this inner ego, which is this judge, this just critical voice. And then we have the inner child that wants out. So this critical parent is yelling at this beautiful inner child. And the reason I call so much of what we do a warrior, like the warrior aspect of the warrior archetype and warrior woman specifically, is because this warrior can come in and go, hey, inner child, I hear you. Hey, judge, can you listen to the inner child? And sometimes the inner child wants irrational things, and we're adults. We have responsibilities. But the inner child just wants to come out and play and be present and play with bugs and be in nature and put our feet in the sand and ground and run away and be in love without the weight of the past that now lives in our waistline, the weight of the past and now the weight on our body. So that's what this retreat's all about, because a lot of us are living with this inner child in prison. And the bars are this ego judge that is keeping us there because we have to fit in everywhere we go, and we lose ourselves from it. So the warrior archetype is to swoop in and save this and form a relationship, because the ego is not all bad. It's just 99% of the time it's wrong. It's a barking dog because there's someone at the door, but just because the dog's barking the door doesn't mean that there's a T-Rex at the door waiting to bite our head off. But that's the reality that we live in. It's a lot of PTSD, and we all have PTSD at this point. Now the studies really are coming out that show that we all do. So at the retreat, I noticed that when I put it out there, that a lot of women who really, really wanted to go in the very beginning said yes. But 95% of women, and I really looked at this, Wendy, their celebrations, whenever I work with a woman, I said, what are you going to do to celebrate when you get this body, when you get this energy, when you get this life that you're after? What are you going to do to celebrate? And the majority of them said, I'm going to take a trip to Europe, or I'm going to take a trip internationally. I'm going to get out of my box and I'm going to go travel, and I'm going to take so-and-so with me. And I went, great. Can I hold you accountable to that once you get to the end of this journey? Yes. 95% of them cheated on themselves and didn't take that trip. So how can we trust ourselves when we lie to ourselves like that? And then we speak in this terminology of once I, and when he, or when she, and we're still living with that power outside of ourselves. So I created the retreat because there was a demand for it. And so the women that have said yes to themselves, who are not cheating on themselves, even amidst their limitations, time, money, energy, they still decided to go. So, yeah, that's why I put that out there, was so that they could celebrate themselves and we can all come together and let the inner child and let the warrior woman out.
Yes, and and one thing I think it's so important is investing in yourself, investing in your health, because you have nothing unless you have your health. And you used to be a financial planner before you became a health coach and FDN, a functional diagnostic nutritionist, and you saw how much your clients spend on medical bills and holistic health, as well as help them secure long-term care and disability insurance. So what's your take on investing in our health now, and that being a wiser choice than the long-term reality of how much it will cost later?
Oh, yeah. So, okay. I'll give you a few examples. So when the number one thing that I saw as a financial planner that resulted in divorce or some sort of estate battle was someone got sick. Someone got really sick and they didn't have enough to support the medical bills. And as we now know, half of the bankruptcies that occur now are due to medical bills, are due to unknown medical expenditures, right? And so we also tend to assume blindly that our insurances will cover XYZ until an unknown happens. And so now we've got, I don't know if it's a tie, but you look at the research and you see two different places, right? Like back pain is the number one cause of disability. And I also read that there's depression is the other number. I don't know if there was the other, but that's my, what I observed.
Well, I know it's like 10% of people are depressed and on medication in the US. It's crazy.
Yeah. And like 25% of women in California are on, like the last I checked, which I did with you, I did an interview on this too when I did the depression summit a few years ago, which I called Heart to Happiness, and it's now on my website. So I interviewed a lot of health experts like you about what really causes depression. And it's not what we think it is. Like serotonin's not the only key, yet that's the only plug that doctors are putting in. And that's where one of our clients, Bailey, and if you look at my website and you can actually see her story, she came to me and she's studying for her bar. She's now an attorney. But imagine trying to study for the bar when you're on 5 medications because you've been diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety disorder, depression, and schizophrenia all in one. And you're taking multiple medications. Who's confused, them or you? And truly, like, hey, if you look at women, we've got 4 cycles, and so we're quadrupolar. If you look at it, we've got emotions. They change, they shift with the moon, and they shift with our bleeding, and so with her, she couldn't even function. So it could have been years more in school. What would that cost? A year in school is $30,000 or so, maybe more. Another client that I work with came to us, and she had 20 hormonal migraines per month. And she was on, of course, Synthroid. She didn't have her thyroid, or part of it was gone. And she was on about 8 medications. And when we were done working with her, she was on 1. And we're still working on, because she doesn't have part of her thyroid. So at that point, when you remove parts, there's definitely a replacement. So she was out of work, not 20 days a week, but, about, I'd say 10 or 15 days a week. And if the average person is making, let's just say $50 a day or $50 an hour times 8, that's $400 a day multiplied by 10 days a month that you're missing, or a week that you're missing. That's $4,000 or a month. Sorry, that's $4,000 a month. That's $48,000 a year. So with disability on the rise because of these 2 things that are happening as a result of toxicity and trauma that are trapped in our body, that we're numbing at all costs to not address because we're taught don't be emotional. Don't talk about your emotions because you're weak. Then you're going to show them your weak side. I say vulnerability is the new strong. I say that you show who you really are. That takes courage. And that's where other women who have stepped up and stepped out of these identities have started to save not only their life, but the money that they've lost for having to spend money on, or even like a gallbladder surgery, A lot of congestion there because of a lot of trapped trauma as well as toxicity. And that's a $15,000 procedure. If you're toxic and you have a baby, and that baby's born in the spectrum, which the odds are high, as we know from, Dr. Stephanie Seneff's work and others, is that's like $150,000 a year. Someone on the spectrum. So these are things that are avoidable. So we can either invest in our health now or in our disease care later. And the list goes on and on and on of how much missed work and how much women are spending on bioidenticals every month. On average, $400 a month is what I see. So that's $5,000 a year on that. So you start really looking at the numbers. And if you can find a practitioner that has something that you can invest in now to learn everything that you need to have your future roadmap, you have then saved yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, down the road.
It's so true. I mean, you're going to invest in supplements and programs and detox and whatnot now, or you're going to pay for medications and nursing homes and doctors later. You're going to pay either way. But I think that the former is much more desirable. But you have 100% success rate with women that you work with and helping them get better because you work on so many different levels of physical and emotional trauma. So why do you have that success rate with the women that you work with that follow the formula that you have?
Yeah, good question. And it's like, I was even skeptical writing that. I was like, do I really have 100% success rate? What does 100% success rate even look like, right? And to me, it means that, first of all, women who come to us seeking support, I'm having a conversation with them first, Wendy. I'm having a real conversation with them. And the questions I ask them are to really assess, are they ready to meet their greatness? Are they really ready to step into their power? Like, are you really ready to know how beautiful and light that you are inside? And when you do, what could that mean for your life? Because for so many people, like, the prison bar analogy, we've shaped our life around being a victim of someone who suffers from something. And what would our life then be if we're no longer suffering, if the diagnosis was gone? Would we then, because in our society, we're prized for being sick. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go to the hospital. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And we get love. We get our needs met somehow. And I'm not knocking people who do that because I do it too. I'm human. We all do it. But this is our ego part that says maybe when we were younger, the only way that we got love and attention is if we were sick. Oh, mommy, I'm not feeling well. Mommy holds you. She picks you up. But maybe mommy didn't really want to touch you otherwise. Maybe she wasn't very loving and affectionate with you. And the only way you can get attention is when you were sick. So these are all things that were shaped and programmed into us at a very young age. And before I invite anybody to work with us, I get super real with them. My goal is not to be their friend. My goal is to be their leader so that they can see some of the things that they're blindsided by, which is 80% of our subconscious. It's just 90% of our subconscious just running a tape back here. And our ego wants to be right with all of that data. So as long as there's this going on back here, the subconscious, we are blindsided by the thoughts that how we've shaped our lives. So my first questions are always, are you open to really going back there and learning this stuff, and not like a therapy session where you go in and just talk therapy, but really going back and freeing those emotions and rewriting the story about everything, that there are no failures in life. There are just opportunities for freedom. There are lessons. And so if we can look at like, okay, well, I just went through a breakup and it was pretty tough, but like we were talking about before this, there was a lot of crap that lived inside of me, a lot of shadow work. And that's another big term that we do with our clients is, are you ready to do some shadow work and really meet these demons inside of you that you've created, these stories that are not real, these mean girl voices inside of you that say, you need to look this way, you need to act this way. If you don't take care of people, you're nothing. If you don't go to work, then you're not going to earn money and you're lazy. And really our body is trying to say, hey, I need some help in here. So courage is the first thing we look at and we look for. And so when I'm first talking to a woman, instead of saying, yeah, I'm going to work with everybody and anyone, you and I both know, Wendy, that kind of situation can drain us, because if people come to us and say, fix me, or any practitioner and say, fix me, well, that's a lot of responsibility. And we've got hundreds, if not thousands of clients to work with at once. So we first really get under the hood with them and say, what's this all for? What is your purpose? What is your passion? And if they're so lost that they feel like they're stuck in concrete, then there's no amount of time or energy or money that they're going to have, because they're always going to be living in this stuckness. So we screen them first to make sure that they're really ready for this and they're really ready to step into their greatness, because once they do, then on the other side is a lot of what they've been dreaming about for many years. And that sounds very, woo-woo or esoteric, but it's true. So to really feel that something, women out there, is they come to us and they say, I know there's something deeper. I don't feel myself. I haven't felt myself for a long time, but they place more value on their body because they have an idea of this purpose that is festering inside, that has been dying over time. It's the song that's going to die inside of them if they don't express it. So they're not okay living like this anymore. They're not okay living in these prison bars. And we look at all of the ways that we support them, and it's tribe, it's empathy, it's the proven formula, it's radical self-love that doesn't happen overnight. And it's being real and honest with them that this is a journey. It's not just, hey, you're done in 8 weeks. It's a journey. We also look at the science behind it. We look at the toxins. We look at the shame and sugar. Am I allowed to swear on this show? I can't remember.
Yeah. No,
okay.
It's fine.
Okay. I call it, we have to look at the 4 SHs, which is the should, shame, shit, and sugars. Mm-hmm. So it starts with, we're shitting all over ourselves. We think we should do all these things and be all these things to everything outside of us. And then there's shame when we fall short of other people's expectations. And then we start eating sugar because to fill that void and the emptiness of feeling crappy about ourselves or sorry about ourselves. And then we now feel shitty because we're full of shit because these toxins now are backed up in our body because our metabolism has decreased because we've got a lot of shit. And then, of course, shame and shoulds that are stuck inside of us. So we address all of those pillars at one time, all of them. What kind of yoga should I be doing? Should I be doing yoga at all? What kind of exercise? Should I be doing any exercise at all? How do you cleanse? Like what kind of cleanse? What kind of supplements? Do I take vitamin D or calcium or not? And the list goes on. And we've got a couple of foundational labs that we use that, of course, medical doctors don't look at that are approved by insurance to look at the root cause of their suffering. So they have a really good idea of what's maybe over years, how they've been contaminating themselves with all of these, just shadow work and negative thinking.
Yeah. And so this is part of the program that you offer. It's called the Hormone Warrior Transformation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that in detail?
Yeah. It's like I said, it's all of these pillars that we're addressing at once. And we walk them through every single element of what most women have questions about today. So, what's going on with my thyroid? And my doctor said my thyroid labs were normal. But you and I both know, Wendy, and many people listening to this know that there's these wide ranges. So then there's the optimal ranges. And then there's your thyroid relative to your adrenals. And then there's your thyroid and your adrenals relative to your ovaries, which I call the Tao. And then it's all of that relative to 11 systems inside of your body that are working like a soccer player to move as a team. And many doctors are specialized, and they're becoming even more specialized, which means they're disconnected from all of those other parts. So we like to be like the Humpty Dumpty, if you will, and put all the parts back together. But we're not doing it. We're empowering our clients to do it themselves so that they can then establish that they have the confidence to do this themselves. And our whole program is founded on, we work on the emotional side, the chakras, energetic centers, where there might be blocks, where there might be trauma that needs to come out, and at the same time work on supplementing with the right kinds of foods so their nutrition status is fulfilled with the things that they're lacking. And that's another thing that people aren't talking about. And what rang true for one of the clients that we just recently graduated from the program is she's in her 50s, and she's been doing 2 decades of work with her therapist. And she said, in 1 month, I was able to free something from my body with this approach that in 20 years of therapy didn't help me with. So I look at this and I go, what happened? What kind of spirit guides were talking through me when I created this whole program? I'm like, wow, it's so vast, but it was born through and out of my own suffering and listening acutely, intently with my heart to all of the other women who are suffering very similarly. And I went, what's missing? What's missing here? Can we put all of the pieces together of where women are exposed to toxins, where they're creating their own, where they're going for support, but give them the support that they're looking for and put it all in one place. So they don't have to go over there and talk to 10 different people who none of which are talking to each other. And of course, the thing that trumps all of that is if you don't have a support structure in your life that wants to be there for you with this kind of journey, which is another reason why we talk to women before we even work with them, then you're going to have potentially jealous people who are afraid of abandonment, of being left behind because you start to improve your health and your life. And that normally is someone's partner because someone gets really healthy and then they don't want to do it with them, and they start to lose sight of their relationship because now the ice cream parties are no longer. But hey, there's replacements. You can have healthier ice cream.
Yeah, that happened to me and my ex-husband as I got healthier and really started taking control of my health and my mental health as well, and got better and better and better. And he just, there's just kickback constantly with what I was doing, and him not believing in what I was doing, and me loving what I was doing, and him just trying to poo-poo it. And he was a germaphobe and I was a chemical phobe. So we were just not, simpatico. And so, and a lot of people experience that, a lot of my clients as well. I find that they just don't want to be with their partner anymore. They change their jobs. They step more into who they are and their life purpose when they improve their health and their energy and their brain function. They become a different person.
They become a different person, and the way that they both numb or experience life changes. So, it was a lesson for you, I'm sure, Wendy, but it sucks to go through it, going through a breakup or a divorce and thinking, well, maybe I'll just stay. Maybe I'll just stay and keep being my old self and stay in this prison because at least I have, a significant other. At least I'm not alone, which is our humans' biggest fear. That's why I became a life coach after doing FDN work, is because I had all these certifications, but there was still something missing. And now what I'm able to find is that the trauma combined with clearing the toxins is where it's at. Because if we're just cleansing the body without simultaneously cleansing the mind with a lot of these trapped traumas and thoughts, it's akin to patching up tire holes with temporary glue. We've got to go after the thing that's poking the holes in, which is these thought patterns. And oftentimes what we'll do is we've got these thought patterns and we want to stop the thought pattern. So we go numb with something, and oftentimes it's food, and oftentimes it's gluten. So what we're able to see with the kind of testing that we do is, just how bad is gluten harming you? And do you even have an immune system on board? We use GI map testing, and we can see just how well their immune system score is with their secretory IgA. And then we can look to see if the body's even mounting a response to gluten. And as an example, Wendy, this is the second time I've said this week, but I haven't really talked about it on my own public show. 2 years ago, you had said something about how you had your am I allowed to say these? Oh
yeah, my boobs implants.
I wasn't sure.
No, it's fine. No, okay. I haven't really talked about it a lot. I need to talk about it more, actually. I was going to write some blog posts about it, but I had breast implants put in when I was 19, and I wasn't exactly thinking very clearly at that time when I was 19 years old. And then I reached a point where I wanted them out of my body. I knew that they were dragging me down. There was toxins being released into my body, and a doctor had told me that they were leaking, and they were leaking silicone into the surrounding tissues. And I was very concerned and had them explanted, had them removed, and started feeling better after I did that. I'm really, really happy I made that decision.
Me too. And I'm happy that you and I talked about this years ago, and my friend wrote an article about this. It's been shared hundreds of thousands of times now. Hugh Hefner is one of his many wives, but that it's on the map years ago. And now, to be completely transparent, I had mine input about 8 years ago when I was a competitive bodybuilder and I was doing bikini shows. And when you're 10% body fat, it's kind of scary looking in the mirror and seeing, just little mosquito bites. And so I went, okay, if I'm going to be a pro, like they say, you got to get double D's. And I went, okay, meh, and put another bar on my prison of expectations of what I was supposed to be for others and to win, right? Whatever it takes. That plus a couple of weeks of trying steroids, which was awful. So that's another, when you see people winning these bikini competitions, a lot of times they're pumped full of a lot of these medications and they're doing whatever it takes too. They have their own prison bars. So the SIG-A that I have, which is just an example, because I can share it, it was like 44, and the ideal range is between 500 to 2000, and mine's 44.
Oh no.
Which means I have like no immune system. So why is that? And oftentimes it is because we've got this constant thing that's a foreign invader inside of our body, leaking, full of metals, full of all kinds of other chemicals that is sabotaging our health. And then I had that low of an immune system, but I had a really high reaction to gluten. Really high. So with a tiny amount of warriors I had in my gut to respond to foreign invaders like that, I was able to mount a reaction to gluten. So people are always on this fence of, do I stop eating gluten because my significant other and I bond over gluten? Well, this is where you can really see the severity of how your body's responding to it. And you can make a more informed decision instead of just hearing all of the riffraff, of people talking about gluten, like Dr. Tom O'Brien. Oh, is that really a problem? Well, then you add on top of that, then there's boobs and there's all these chemicals, and you just go, it's time to get real. What did I get these boobs for? And now I have an appointment to talk about explant surgery in November, and I want them out yesterday, So it's a lot of these boobs were created because I was living in shame of my body. And now it's time to love it. And somehow in this process of this whole journey of creating this space for women to step into a safe, sensual, soft, surrendered tribe, I fell in love with myself. Mm-hmm. And I went, this doesn't feel selfish. This is actually what it means to be a protector, a warrior of your own temple. So this is a lot of the stuff we're talking about is real conversations, and the truth behind them, and finding out what your truth is, what our client's truth is, and finally getting to meet the magic inside. So it's a journey, and it's not like this one thing is causing it or this one thing will fix it. It's all of it. And so I said, if I could build an online hospital, so to speak, like a natural place to heal, what would it look like? What would it feel like? Who would be in there? What would we be talking about? What kind of solutions would we be giving? And I built it and I made it. And now women, over 50 women and 15 different countries all around the world have gone through it. And we've had lots and lots of births and, new businesses and divorces. Oops.
Yeah. I have a lot of clients who got divorced too.
Oops.
Well, they start getting better, but hey, they were not happy with their husbands. I had one client the other day, we have a question on our health history form. What are the major stressors in your life? And she put down my knucklehead husband. Those are stressors. So funny. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing though. When a relationship doesn't work, or you got into the relationship for the wrong reasons, or into a job for the wrong reasons. When you get your energy back and get your health back, you can get your power back. You get that motivation, the energy to make these changes and transitions that you didn't really have the courage or the energy to do prior. So it's a beautiful thing. Even though we, as humans, we don't like change, healing our bodies can lead to healing our souls and making those changes we've been afraid to make. Yeah. And that's the process. That's the process that we start with, is that soul goal. I call it a soul goal. And that in and of itself can light you up with more energy that you didn't have before. And if not, if you already have an idea of your soul goal, but there's other things that aren't really working, then we work with women to stabilize their blood sugar. Then we cleanse the chemical interference, which are the toxins, and then we restore their minerals and mitochondria with their metabolism, and then they start to find their voice at that point, and we're building their gut, and they've got this gut feeling and their intuition, and things are starting to come to them instead of having to chase after things. And it just feels like life just becomes this dance where it's no longer difficult, and you just trust that everything is happening. There's a lesson in everything. You're not a victim of anything. And then you continue on with this life that is like, how can I continue to live a clean life? Not just from a perspective of chemicals, but people too. Like, I keep those parasitic people away from me. And I'm going to say no to this person, because no is one of the
more popular words I'm teaching women now, because many women don't know how to say it. Years and years and years of ancestral trauma passed down, years. You know, I do plant medicine. I don't think I can say much about what it is on this podcast, but you start to really see x-rays of the past and of what we've inherited from our ancestors, a lot of war trauma, a lot of PTSD. And so this is my work now, is working through my own PTSD, helping women work through their PTSD, because doing that alone could lead you over a cliff. So having someone who really understands how to work through shame and remodel and rewrite your past and your future, alongside cleansing your body and nourishing your soul and nourishing your cells, that's where the dance comes together and the soccer players win the game. And we get to run around saying ole, ole everywhere.
Well, I wish I could go on your Costa Rican retreat with you. And definitely I want to join you next time. And you're going to be doing this on a regular basis, correct? Your retreats?
Yeah.
That's
it's
great.
Necessary. It's when I saw the reason why women are doing this, I went, it's my responsibility to provide the container. You know, Wendy, this podcast for you, it's a beautiful container that you allow people to step into and learn about themselves and transform. And so I'm doing the same. I'm providing a container. Whoever steps into it and says, I want to transform myself, then we give them a beautiful place, a trustworthy place where they can transform with a tribe, because people are looking for tribe. We're so lonely these days, you know, working from home, it gets lonely sometimes.
Yeah, and everyone just wants to feel good, and they need some direction and some guidance on the path to take to do so. And so even if you're not able to go on one of Diane's retreats, you can do her program. You can learn more about that at dianekazer.com/Myers Detox. So dianekazer.com/Myers Detox if you want to learn more about her program and details and all of that you can do online.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd love to. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, Diane, thanks so much for coming on the show and wanting to tell the listeners where they can find you and learn more about you.
Yeah, well, my name is Diane Kazer. So just like you heard, Wendy just provided a link. And so you can find me, dianekazer.com, and that'll take you to all my fun social media sites, whatever that is, if it's YouTube and fun videos. My enema video is somehow one of my most popular videos, how to do an enema. Do you have one up too, Wendy?
I do, and I plan to make more. Because they're such a popular guest segment on YouTube. They're
gonna be fun. You know, I put a monkey and monkey throwing poo in there, and so it just became fun and popular, because these things could be really taboo for people. What do you mean I'm gonna stick up what? And it gets a little weird. So I'm trying to make it wacky and warrior and weird all at the same time. So you can find me on my website, and all the things will populate from there.
Okay, fantastic. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. You can learn more about me, Wendy Myers, at myersdetox.com. We have hundreds of articles and hundreds of podcasts all about natural healing your health conditions, and detoxification, especially heavy metal detoxification. So thanks for listening. And you can download my top 10 tips to detox like a pro checklist at detoxforenergy.com. Talk to you next week.